Welcome back to a Book a Day podcast. In the previous two episodes, I narrated a few passages from the book called A Book of Simple Living by Ruskin Bond. Today, in the final episode of this series, I'm going to continue do the same. I will narrate some beautiful passages from the book which I hope will bring you close to nature, especially close to the Himalayan countryside in India. So, without any delay, let me start narrating some passages from the part 3 of this book. The book, as I said, is called A Book of Simple Living, written by Ruskin Bond. Here we go. I had wandered some way down the Tiri road, and it is quite late by the time I returned to Landour Bazaar. Lights still twinkle on the hills, but the shop fronts are shuttered and the narrow street is silent. It is a cold night. Doors and windows are shut. The people living on either side of the street can hear my footsteps, and I can hear the occasional loud remark, music from a transistor radio, a burst of laughter, someone coughing and groaning in the dark. A three-quarters moon is up, and the tin roofs of the bazaar, drenched with dew, glisten in the moonlight. The street is unlit, but I need no torch. I can see every step of the way. I can even read the headlines on the discarded newspaper lying in the gutter. Although I am alone on the road, I am aware of the life pulsating around me. 3 stray dogs are romping in the middle of the road. It is their road now, and they abandon themselves to a wild chase. The rickshaw stand is deserted. One rickshaw catches the eye because it is decorated with marigolds, many of them still fresh. A jackal slinks across the road, looking to straight, then right, then left, to make sure the dogs have gone. A field rat wriggles its way through a hole in a rotting plank on its nightly foray among sacks of grain and pulses. As I walk further along the empty streets under the shadow of the clock tower, I find a boy huddled in a recess, a thin shawl wrapped around his shoulders. He is wide awake and shivering. I pass by, head down, my thoughts already on the warmth of my room in the small cottage only a mile away. And then I stop. It is almost as though the bright moonlight has stopped me, holding my shadow in thrall. I make no conscious decision, but I am walking back to the shadows where the boy crouches. He does not say anything, but he looks up at me, puzzled and apprehensive. All the warnings of well-wishers crowd in upon me. Stories of crime by night, of assault, robbery, blackmail. Well, we are equals, in our fear as in our loneliness. I can tell from his features that he comes from the hills beyond Teri. He has come here looking for work, and he has yet to find any. Have you somewhere to stay? I ask. He shakes his head, but something about my tone of voice has given him confidence, because now there is a glimmer of hope, a friendly appeal in his eyes. I have committed myself. I cannot pass. A shelter for the night, that's the very least one human should be able to expect from another. If you can walk some way, I offer, I can give you a bed and blanket. He gets up immediately, a thin boy wearing only a shirt and part of an old army tracksuit. He follows me without any hesitation. I cannot now betray his trust, nor can I fail to trust him. So now there are 2 in the sleeping moonlit bazaar. I glance up at the tall and shaky wooden houses packed with families. They seem to lean towards each other for warmth and companionship. The boy walks silently beside me. Soon we are out of the bazaar and on the footpath. The mountains loom over us. A fox crosses our path and a night bird calls. And although no creature of the forest has ever harmed me, I'm glad I have a companion. Reading a book of Bhutanese wisdom, I came upon this little gem. Cold weather does not care if your coat is old or new. Given my sensual nature, I count myself lucky for having been spared the affliction of acquisitiveness. It is a matter of temperament. I was born this way, I can take no credit for it. I began living on my own at 17. It was a tiny barsati in Dehradun. A bed, a table, and a chair were all that the room contained. It was all I needed, all that any writer needs. Even today, over 60 years later, my room contains the same basic furnishings, only the table is larger to accommodate more in the way of paper and manuscripts. The bed is slightly more comfortable, and there is a rug on the floor. There's a separate room for my books, a luxury. Yes, the rest of the house has grown as my adopted family has grown. There's a television set in the dining room, a refrigerator in the kitchen. A few years ago, we found we had saved enough to buy a car. To be unconcerned about a desired good is probably the only way to possess it. To paraphrase Lao Tzu, one sure way to lose the world and everything in it is to try grasping it. If you owe nothing, you are rich. Money makes, money rather doesn't make people happy. But neither does poverty. The secret then is to have as much as you need, or maybe a little more, and then share what you have. I enjoy life, said Seneca, because I am already ready to leave it. If we can disencumber ourselves of 9/10 of our worldly goods, it should not be difficult to leave the rest behind. One of life's greatest pleasures is free. It lies in watching a plant grow, from seed to seedling, to green branch to bough, to flower to fruit. As with many who love gardens, I have never really had enough space in which to create a proper garden of my own. The only time I had a patch of free earth at my disposal was back in the 1960s, when I was living in an old cottage on the outskirts of Mussoorie. Even then, it was a few square feet of rocky hillside. All that I had managed to grow on it were daisies, and they had probably have grown there anyway. Still, they made for a charmingly dappled hillside throughout the summer, especially on full moon nights when the flowers were at their most radiant. For many years now, I have had to live in the modest dwellings, sometimes on the upper floors of tumble down buildings which have no garden space at all. All the same, there are always a number of ever widening cracks in which wild sorrels, dandelions, thorn apples, and nettles, and sometimes a miniature peepal tree all take root and thrive. You could call it a wild wall garden, as pleasing a sight as any. I wouldn't go so far as to say that a garden is the answer to all our problems, but it's amazing how a little digging and friendly dialogue with the good earth can help reactivate us when we grow sluggish. Before I moved into my present home, which has no space for a garden, I had, as I've said, a tiny patch on the hillside where I grew some daisies. Whenever I was stuck in the middle of a story or an essay, I would go into my hillside garden and get down to the serious business of transplanting or weeding or pruning or just plucking off dead blooms. And in no time at all, I was struck with the notion of how to proceed with the stalled story, reluctant essay, or unresolved poem. Not all gardeners are writers. But you don't have to be a writer to benefit from the goodness of your Gendas or Ratkiranis. Baldev, who heads a large business corporation in Delhi, tells me that he wouldn't dream of going to his office unless he has spent at least half an hour in his garden. If you can start the day by looking at the dew on your antiruniums, he tells me, you can face the stormiest of board meetings. Or take Annie Powell. At one time, my neighbor in Missouri, who at the age of 90 was up early every morning to water her little garden. Watering can in hand, she would move methodically from one flower bed to the next, devotedly giving each plant a sprinkling. She said she loved to see leaves and flowers sparkling with fresh water. It gave her new lease of life every day. Gardens remind me of one of the few friends I had had as a child. His name was Dukhi and he took care of the garden in my grandmother's house in Dehradun. Time had no meaning in a large garden and Dukhi never hurried. Life for him was not a matter of one year succeeding another, but of 5 seasons: winter, spring, hot weather, monsoon, and autumn, arriving and departing. His seed beds had always to be in readiness for the coming season, and he did not look any further than the next monsoon. It was impossible to tell his age. He was either very young for his years or very old for them. Duki loved bright colors, especially reds and yellows. He liked strongly scented flowers like jasmine and honeysuckle. He couldn't understand my granny's preference for the more delicately perfumed petunias and sweet peas. But I shared Dukhi's fondness for the common bright orange marigold. When the garden was bare of all color, the marigold would still be there, gay and flashy, challenging the sun. Dukhi was very fond of making nosegays, and I liked to watch him at work. A sunflower formed the centerpiece. It was surrounded by roses, marigolds, and oleander fringed with green leaves and bound together with silver thread. Was Dukhi already Dukhi? Sad? If he was, the garden kept him going. So that was the reading for today, and I hope once again you enjoyed it, you felt closer to Himalayan nature, and we'll continue reading and exploring more books in the next few days, in the next few episodes. But as far as this episode is concerned, let's finish it right here and continue our journey from the next episode onwards. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting. Thank you.